and we'll keep it for the end. So here, the SMEs versus large project. Same differences. So here, in the past, we faced several, I can say, issues to tackle the large project. So what we used to do is to follow the client approach and methodology, and we struggle to adapt ourselves to every kind of methodology, processes, and so on. Internally at Odoo, we also deploy a lot of projects for the SMEs. We used to deploy around 700 projects per year using one methodology which is working. It has proven that it works, and so we start from these statements. If it works for SMEs, it should work for larger companies. So we, based on this, we looked at how we can adapt our methodology to be able to tackle both sides of this ERP market, the SMEs and the large companies, which has, I can say, the same basic needs, but with some other elements to take into account. Here, so we put in place one methodology, but with different focus. Of course, we use one same process, one same way to tackle those projects, and it consists in those main aspects. If you want some additional details, feel free to have a look at the session given by my colleague Antoine Sancy about this Odoo Implementation Methodology. So to quickly summarize it, what we really need in this methodology is to have a good SPOC, so single point of contact, to really be able to make the project as a success. Without a good SPOC, it's hard to reach our goal. We also have to challenge every request, even for big companies who are used to get a yes to every request. We took the position to challenge it and to make it the most standard possible. So it's also the next point is to stay standard. That's also one of the key points, because of course, the more development you have, the bigger the issue or the risk you might have later for the migration, the bug fixing, and the maintenance. And the last topic is about the phasing. Avoid the big bang approach and put in place some phase in order to tackle the complexity of every project. The different focus between the SMEs and the large companies is the more rigidity you can face in the large companies. Of course, they have well-established processes, there are a bigger number of people involved in every decision, so it's a bit harder or complex to make them move or switch from one position to another. There is also a political dimension to take into account, because people do not want to lose any, you can say, power or elements or work that they used to do in the past. So it's a bit hard to make also adapt to the new philosophy or the new tool. They can be, I can say, frightened by the change that a new ERP is bringing to the company. There is also a slower decision-making process, because the company is less flat, of course, than SMEs. There is different level of hierarchy that you have to convince or you have to explain why you need to take this decision. So all those elements has to be taken into account, and that can differ from the SMEs here. Here, quick recap, visual recap about this methodology. We have this ROI analysis that you can have a lot of detail in my other presentation during those Odoo experience. And then you have the next phase, which is a project kickoff, where you have to align every person inside the project to get everyone going in the same direction. So here the purpose of this call is to set up the mindset and the methodology of the project and to align all the visions. Then of course you switch to the project implementation, where each cycle is one phase of the project to avoid again the big bang approach and to control the complexity, the planning and the budget and so on, and allow you to go step by step and to onboard people, I can say one population at a time. After the implementation, you have also the deployment, where you try to deliver something to the customer as quickly as possible to really get people used to the software and start using it as soon as possible. Then the project will continue to iterate between cycles and other phase to go live and then reach the last step, which is the project going fully to production and then go to a support movement. Here, so this is really our key objective within every project is to onboard user on time and on budget. And to do that, we have several tools and several ways to use to make this as a success. So onboarding users, so we try to split every project into small pieces, so small phases or sprints, to really be able to deliver something to the user, so they start using Odoo pretty quickly and avoid all the tunnel effect that you might face within a longer implementation time. Being on time, so you have to respect the planning given by the customer, and so everyone will be happy if the project go live on schedule. And the budget is also the element to take into account. So here it's our responsibility, the consultant responsibility, to stick to the negotiated budget by challenging every possible request to make it as standard as possible, to reduce both the planning and the budget risks. So based on this, what we try to do, so on the SMEs market, we were used to handle a lot of projects at the same time. Every consultant can handle a lot of projects in parallel at the same time, and we wanted to do a bit the same for larger companies and larger projects. So what we try to do and how we try to do that is first to organize ourselves. So we build dedicated teams to tackle the specific issues or specific situation that we have to handle in this corporate market, such as a dedicated sales team who are responsible from the negotiation, the ROI analysis, and then continuing to maintain the relationship with the client. We also have a dedicated pre-sales team, so who is responsible to perform this ROI analysis, and also a dedicated project management team, where we have people dedicated to those kind of projects that will be involved in every team at the specific level in the project. Quick overview on how we source a project within the corporate market. We have the classic team. We have the business advisor, so the sales guy. We have the app expert that can help all the business analysts to tackle some specific issues. Then we have the main forces, which is a project leader who is handling the project management tasks, some of them, who is also doing the business analysis activities, helped by the developers. And then what we do, we add another resource, which is a project director, who is only dealing with project management activities, who is responsible to maintain the relationship with the steering committee, so with the SPOC, and also the sponsors of the company. On the client side, of course, we have the SPOC, the sponsors, and all the key users. And all these teams work together to make the project a success. So here, that's how we organize a bit ourselves to tackle those large accounts and those large projects. What we also do, we are building a toolbox. So it will be a toolbox where consultants can pick some elements from other projects, some elements that work really well inside some other project, to reuse it and to build a library of tools to really facilitate also the onboarding of new colleagues, and to also set up some kind of a framework for those large accounts. So really to be able to replicate project after project and follow one same approach, one same path for every project, to be able to tackle them fast, reduce the time spent in the preparation of all the kickoff, the go live, the different phasing approach. So what we have, so first we of course have a planning view that we can share with the customer, where we have all the availabilities and the absence of the different stakeholders of the project, or on the Odoo side, so on the project team, but also on the client side. Then we add the project planning, where we have all the sprints that we have built for that project, and we see the different stages of each sprint. So we know that the first week of September here, we will design really the first sprint. So we will decide which tasks to handle and how we'll tackle them. Okay. Then we switch to the validation. So we ask the client to validate what would be the content of the sprint and validate that everything is correct. Then we go in the realization. And then we can also customize here, depending on the project, which if we have to remove or add some other stage, of course. We also have here the forecasting and also another view for the planning, which is here a bit more detailed, as we can also here display, I can say, partial leaves, etc. So here we are trying to give some tools to every consultant to help them to communicate better with the client. It also helps for the planning, the forecasting of the resources, and also to generate the planning that we have seen just before, by defining the number of days where we have some availabilities to make some development, some workshops, some jobs. We also have some invoicing report, where we have to explain and give some more details for the invoice we are providing to the customer, by providing him a recap of the real time spent by each team members. Of course, you can have some differences between what you have planned and what's with the real information, the real time spent. So it's important to give to the customer what has been done during the month. So every month you can share this with the customer, even using Google spreadsheets, so nothing to be done and nothing to be shared by mail. It can be directly shared with the customer. And we are continuing here by to build this toolbox by providing new templates to make the kickoff calls with the team members, to generate also some steering committees directly. So really to build some templates to help people to not spend too much time by generating new slides, which can be time consuming, and so also consume part of the budget that can be allocated to something, let's say, more useful than making slides. We also have, as an example, I can say a measure to see if the project is in a good shape or not. So with a list of checkpoints that we have to tick to whether decide if you are on a good track or not. So here, by the time, we're gonna continue to make this toolbox evolve to help us to really industrialize the process of delivery, the project on the corporate market. So here, really what we are trying to do is to have one common path for every kind of project, small, medium, and large one, to be able to make and to put any consultant on every kind of project. So no need for a big time of onboarding, on training, to move from, I can say, a small project to a big one, because here the basics and all the process are shared together. So here, to summarize, what's important is really to keep our objective in mind, is to have onboarded the user on time and on budget, which is the main key point that you have to keep in mind at all time, and to challenge every business request. So thank you for your attention, and so now we can switch to the Q&A session, and we'll look at the question you have asked in the chat. Thank you.
All right, Gregory, thank you again for a great presentation. For those who don't know me, my name is Niels. I'll be asking you some questions today. Some came on the chat, some I will just ask you directly. First things first, a lot of people ask for your presentation. Will it be shared afterwards?
Yeah, so all the presentation done during the Odoo experience will be shared and uploaded on our website, but also the video will also be available on the YouTube channel of Odoo.
Okay, so with that cleared out, back to the topic. Large projects. When do we define a project as large?
Yeah, so it really depends. So because we have different factors to identify a project as a large one, it's not only the number of users or the amount of development that might be required, but it also, I can say, the name of the company that also triggers the way we will handle the project if we have to build a specific and dedicated team. So based on that, the amount of users, the requested developments or potential developments, plus I can say the name of the company, we might decide to take it as a large one, and also because they might request some additional or specific aspect or the way to handle them or to tackle the project. So here, there is no, I can say, clear answer to define, okay, this one is a more quick start project, or this one is a corporate or large account project. It really depends on the context of the client and the project itself.
All right, great. There are also quite some questions around the toolbox that you mentioned and you explained a little bit during the presentation.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you can share about this toolbox, what it will bring in terms of time saving or success for the presentation?
Yeah, so what we saw, so here we looked at the way we are doing the project, and we saw that we are not, you can say, the most efficient, because for every project we tend to adapt or to create new file, new way to handle steering committees, project committees and stuff, and to also communicate plannings, timesheets and stuff to the clients. So those time for us is integrated as, I can say, a time loss, because we can spend this time in something more useful for the client and for the project. Because building a template in PowerPoint or create a file in Excel does not make the project move forwards, and only, you can say, bring some delays in the deliveries of the project. So here, this is why we decide to build this toolbox where a consultant can decide which templates can be useful for the client. If he needs more or less details for some information, or on the planning level, if he wants to have it by day, by week, by month, or something like this, we can decide which template to mobilize and be efficient enough, and also facilitate the onboarding of new consultant. Because of course, if you have a new project director involved in a project, he does not have to think or to ask questions to define how to build a new planning, or to build a planning that can be shared with the customer, or to structure a steering committee or a project committee, and so on. So that's why here we decide to really build this toolbox to help everyone, every party involved in the project, the customer, the Odoo consultant as well.
And that toolbox, is that something that will be shared with the viewers? Is that something that viewers should design themselves?
So here we can share some of the documents, but mainly are acquired internal at the moment. And since we are still building the toolbox, it's pretty hard to say if this is something, say, shareable or applicable to anybody. But of course, we will be happy to share everything that can be, say, translated into companies other than Odoo or in other organizations. But of course, most of them will be shared as the ROI analysis as well.
Okay, so we can maybe say that it's an advice to partners and implementers to build your own toolbox and to learn from...
yeah, of course. Here, the best way is to build his own toolbox, so to get the tools designed for the organization, but also we can provide some of them to help them to build it. To take, as it is, our toolbox will not be super efficient, because you will have to adapt your structure, your organization to ours, and sometimes it will not fit, but of course we can make the job and share it maybe in the future when we will have something more finished.
Okay, so maybe go slightly into that toolbox a bit further, because there are some questions that are more directed towards industries. If we have any templates, if we have any designed documents for dedicated industries, is that something that we have, or is that something that you would even recommend?
So here what we have is generic documents that we apply to any industry or any companies. So here we don't have like industry-specific document, at least at the moment. Of course, with the new project that might come in, we might have to design or to adapt our template to fit some industry requests. I don't know, for example, some furniture markets or furniture builder companies might have some specific requests, and we have to adapt it to make it the more convenient and the more useful for those companies. But at the moment, we are trying to build the most generic templates to be the most efficient on every project that might arrive at Odoo. It might be
Okay. So some other questions that came across in the chat, and I think in general it's quite interesting. During the presentation, you already mentioned something around the steering commission. The standard methodology of Odoo recommends to onboard a SPOC, a single point of contact. In the chat, someone asked about onboarding a project manager from the client side. How would you organize this, let's say, group of involved people during an implementation? Yeah,
that's one of the difference between what we call the quick start project, so mainly for the SMEs, and the large project, is that we have to handle some more, I can say, other smaller teams. All the committees that need to be involved, such as the managers, the sponsors, and also the project managers as well. So to get them involved, we try to involve them in every potential meeting, and we try also to communicate with them as much as possible. That's why here we plan and we take into account in the planning to have some steering committee with, I can say, the top management that requires or asks for, let's say, a general view on how the project is going, where we are in the budget consumption, and if everything is okay. Then we also schedule some project committees with really the project team, with project managers, with the different SPOC we have in the different departments, to really show on a more detailed view how it goes. We look task per task, task by task, how it goes, if we miss the deadline or not, if we have to replan some elements, if some change request might come up. And so really to build, I can say, a relationship where we are really transparent and everyone is aware on how the project is going and what's the job being done at the moment by the Odoo team, but also what's being done by the client, because sometimes he needs to prepare some documents to send us some information. So it's important that we also have a view on their action. And so here it's important to get people on the same boat, because here the project will have to be a success, and to make that we have to both teams being involved and onboarded in the project.
All right. So we should basically not forget that there's a role for everyone involved and how to measure them.
There is roles and responsibility for each part, so on the Odoo team and also on the client team.
Okay, great. Maybe something else. Well, you've done already a talk earlier today. During your presentation, you already showed an Excel sheet with some calculations and some planning. Could you explain us a little bit more about which kind of template you use for that?
Yeah. So here, basically, what we do, so we base the toolbox on different Excel views. So we have one for the planning, the overall planning of the project, splitting the project per sprint, and define it for the entire team, and to show it to the different committee. But we also have different views of this planning. We have also the view of the availabilities of the resource to define if the person is allocated to the project or not. And so what we do here, we just base those tools on our personal experience and define how it goes and what suits the best the customer at the moment.
So that, I guess, there's a question from I think Guy, if I pronounce it well, around the development and customizations that are integrated in the project, so that have to be embedded in the whole toolbox. That document and that analysis will allow us to.
So here, those information. So we handle that and we take those numbers out of the ROI analysis. So for more information, you can look at my talk I did just before to get the entire number. But we don't only take into account in the planning the development, because there is also some configuration that needs to be done. And to do that, we have built, I can say, a matrix based on our experience of how long it takes to implement a stock management or MRP or CRM or an accounting. So here, all the numbers we have is based on our experience. So here, the template we provide is really based on our experience and needs to be adapted to every, can say, context, every company implementing Odoo.
No. So such an analysis, a word comes by in the chat, a gap analysis. You mentioned an ROI. This is basically the start of every large project?
Yeah, basically, we always start by the ROI analysis, only called gap analysis. in which now we take also the return on investment part. That was not the case in the gap at the first side. And so yeah, that's the first part, to really define the scope of the project and evaluate the required planning and the required budget for that.
All right, great. There are a lot of questions about the availability on some documents. I guess we can share that either they will be in the description of the presentation afterwards or on the partner knowledge base where possible. There are also some questions about the Odoo shoes. The answer was already given in the chat, but maybe for those who came a bit later.
Yeah, so here you can directly find it, the answer directly on our website, on the Odoo Experience website. There is a dedicated menu on it about the goodies where you can have the shoes.
Great. So I don't see any questions coming further on the chat. I think the presentation in general was very clear. So thank you, Gregory, for that.
Thank you for the question.
Is there anything as last that you want to say to the viewers?
Except thank you for watching, and wishing you that you can that I allow you to start, I can say, building, or giving you some potential ways to start building your own toolbox to handle I can say large project. I don't have I've said, I think, pretty much everything I wanted to share with you.
Great.
So I would say thank you for watching again, and enjoy all the other talks and presentation that will be performed during those 2 days at the Odoo Experience.
Likewise from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bem. Yeah, but that's a bit why I put it. The questions that they ask, man, they repeat. Well, I could, but there's not enough money.